warmly welcome you remotely at the Conference of Transparency International Hungary. My name is József Péter Martin, Executive Director of TI Hungary and the moderator of the first two sessions of today's event. The title of today's conference is Safeguarding Democratic Elections in Central and Eastern Europe. With the help of our international team of panelists, we shall explore best practices of mobilizing citizens and preventing election manipulation. We will have 4 panels during the day, out of which 3 will be accessible only online, while the last one will be also open to in-person participation here at the Central European University. Before the sessions, in a minute, we will hear the keynote speech of Magnus Öhman, who is the director of the Regional Europe Office at the International Foundation for Electoral Systems. Mr. Öhman can't be with us real time as he is traveling right now. Therefore, he sent us a video message which describes the state of elections in Central and Eastern Europe in these turbulent times. Subsequently, the first panel will be about mobilizing citizens, and after a very short technical break, we shall move to another topic, namely detecting and countering disinformation, with special focus on Russian disinformation in Central and Eastern Europe. Then we shall have a lunch break until 2:30 p.m. when we start the third online panel titled Detecting and Countering Election Fraud. The international participants of these panels will join us online. Meanwhile, the Hungarian participants will be here at CEU in person. We invite the audience to join these panels online. At the end of each session, we will have Q&A. You can ask questions in chat. During each session, we will ask the audience to share their views with us by answering some simple questions in Mentimeter. The panelists will reflect on the results. The last panel, which starts at 5 p.m., will be different as most of the panelists and large part of the audience will present here at Central European University. But this session will be live streamed as well, so you can follow it remotely too. This last on-site session will focus on Hungary before the upcoming high-stake parliamentary election. During this session, we will have the privilege of Tineke Strik, a Dutch MEP and permanent rapporteur on the rule of law situation in Hungary, joining the panel debate. The Hungarian participants of this session will be renowned political and election experts, Eszter Galgóci, Robert László, and Endre Hahn. And now let me share with you some more technical information. The detailed program of the conference is available in the link in chat window. To use the interpretation service, please also follow the instruction in the chat window. The Mentimeter will appear there as well. And last but not least, please post your questions and comments in the chat as well. After this very short introduction, I wish you an insightful conference. And now I invite you to see the video of Magnus Öhman, who is the director of International Foundation for Electoral Systems. Thank you very much for your attention.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for inviting me to speak to you at this important conference. I'm Magnus Öhman. I'm Senior Political Finance Advisor at the International Foundation for Electoral Systems, IFES. I've worked with supporting political processes and in particular elections for about 20 years now. I've also been living in the Czech Republic since 2008. When we consider the challenges to elections in Central and Eastern Europe today, it is important that we consider where we are coming from. There's no doubt that the communist dictatorships in all countries in Central and Eastern Europe created significant challenges for democratic development. But this period is increasingly becoming a distant memory. We should look for other factors in considering the hindrance to democracy in the region. In fact, it's now only a handful of years left until the period since communism fell in our region is longer than the period of the communist dictatorships. To reiterate a fact that we all know, elections is not the same as democracy. We need continued engagement between politicians and the people at all times. There's a lot of talk about the level of trust among citizens in their political leaders. I sometimes get the impression that people think of trust as an independent variable just floating around, and we must simply hope the trust levels are high and increasing. This is not true. Trust must be earned, and the level of trust can be impacted by honest and consistent decision making and engagement with the people. Though elections is not the same as democracy, it is clear that it is a necessary condition for democratic governance. If we cannot hold political leaders accountable through regular elections, the motivation for listening to the people will decline, and the role of the people in the governance of their country will fade away. Today we are facing numerous challenges to elections in Central and Eastern Europe, and many of these will be discussed in the conference today. The advent of social media a couple of decades ago, and the way that it has spread since then, is excellent for our democracies. It has never been easier for people to engage with others, to spread their views, to debate key issues. The spread of social media has also brought with it challenges that we have to face, especially the spread of disinformation by actors both within and outside our countries, which can seriously undermine trust in our electoral processes. In a similar way, artificial intelligence can assist people in understanding very complex issues and going through large amounts of information. It is important that we consider the opportunities that AI brings, for example in election observation, in protecting the integrity of elections. At the same time, the spread of artificial intelligence brings with it challenges. I would argue, others may disagree, that the threats of AI to our democracies, to our elections, lies mainly in the ability of actors to use this technology to enhance other threats, mainly the spread of disinformation. Given my role as political finance advisor, I also have to emphasize the role that money has in the electoral process. It is of course necessary for electoral contestants to have access to resources, so they can engage the electorate in a dialogue where they explain their policies and they hear from the voters how they want their country to be governed. Nor is the role of money in politics anything new. For as long as we've held elections, money has been used in different ways to seek to influence electoral outcomes. But with new forms of campaigning and of moving resources around, it is becoming easier for malign actors to impact election processes in their own and in other countries. This can include paying for online political advertisements, buying the use of bots or social media influencers in seeking to persuade voters to vote for a particular party, or in seeking to undermine trust in the electoral system as a whole. In this context, it is important that I mention Resolution 11-7, which was adopted by the Conference of States Parties to the United Nations Convention Against Corruption, UNCAC, in December last year, so not long ago. This is the most detailed global standards document on the role of money in politics and elections. I urge you all to read it very carefully. The use of state resources to influence elections is an old challenge. It has proven particularly difficult to fight. The ways that state resources are abused has changed in recent decades. Perhaps in particular, state-owned media outlets used to have a dominant role in how people receive news and information. In the current era of social media and online news, this is no longer the case. But other ways of using state resources to influence how people vote have proven very difficult to counter. In many cases, this remains as rampant today as it did a few decades ago. One major actor that does not wish to see democratic elections flourish in Central and Eastern Europe is the regime in the Russian Federation. Through the full-scale invasion of Ukraine and the interference in elections in a series of European countries, the regime in Kremlin has clearly indicated that it is not in favor of having vibrant democracies as neighbours. We must prove them wrong. This brings additional challenges that we must face in protecting our democracies. I'm happy that this issue will be discussed in the conference today. It's not all doom and gloom. I should also mention some good news. Voter turnout, at least in Central Europe, is not falling. Comparing the number of votes to the voting age population, the turnout has been stable or slowly increasing in all Visegrad 4 countries in the last decade. Sure, there are worrying signs, for example, the decline in turnout among young voters in the European Union elections of 2024. But it is important that we keep an eye also on the opportunities that exist for protecting and strengthening democratic elections. In this, it is very important to know that voters have not, at least not yet, given up on participating. Across Central Europe, people are as willing to come out and vote today as they were 20 years ago. And we need to use this willingness to our advantage. As will be discussed in the first session of this conference, one challenge we face is in mobilizing voters. This is then less in the simple number game of getting people to turn out on election day. More important is their engagement in key issues in their countries, their willingness to participate in discussions of how we should solve the problems that our countries are facing. In protecting our electoral processes, our role as civil society is to identify and target the many different threats coming from many different actors. We must consider which are the main threats to our elections today and tomorrow, and how these threats should be met. Each country is unique, but there is much that we can learn from each other regarding common challenges, to which we must develop common solutions to be adjusted to the situation in each country and deployed effectively. I and my colleagues at the International Foundation for Electoral Systems are honoured to partner with and support civil society actors across Europe seeking to protect and strengthen electoral integrity in their country. And in these efforts, the International Conference on Safeguarding Democratic Elections in Central and Eastern Europe, organised today by Transparency International Hungary, has an crucial role to play. I wish you all the best in your discussions. Thank you.
So Mr. Öhman's speech gave us a very comprehensive overview about how to safeguard democratic elections in Central and Eastern Europe. And now, during the first panel, we shall see and we shall discuss how it works in practice. As it was mentioned by Mr. Öhman, the topic of the first session will be the citizens' mobilization, how to mobilize citizens for election participation, as well as, for example, for election oversight. Let me introduce first the distinguished panelists of today's first session. Next to me is Zsófia Banuta, who is co-founder of Unhack Democracy, which is a member of the European Platform for Democratic Elections and the global network of domestic elections monitor. Then the other on-site participant will be Monika Balint, who is Managing Director from Civil College Foundation. And two persons join us remotely. Let me introduce you first Katarzyna Batko-Toluch, who is Managing Director of Foundation of Poland, as well as Zuzanna Petkova, who is Managing Director of Stop Corruption Foundation in Slovakia. So as you could see from the introduction, we shall focus on three countries this time, Poland, Slovakia and Hungary. And we shall discuss of the best practices and lessons learned from previous elections about citizens' mobilizations. As you know, the last national elections were held in Slovakia and in Poland in 2023. In Hungary, it was back in 2022. We are approaching to the next one in this country, but we will speak about it later on. So let me ask, as the first question of this conversation, let me ask you about the lessons learned from the previous national elections in Hungary, in Slovakia, and in Poland. So what were the most efficient techniques for mobilizing citizens for participating in the elections? Who would like to start? Perhaps somebody here on site? Monica?
Yeah, in our context, we are working with local communities, and the Hungarian situation is a little bit different than in other countries because, on one hand, most of our civic organizations are not directly endorsing any political actors or parties. And since December 2023, there is also a legal constraint on these activities in Hungary, which is directed more on the people who are running for office. So if any, we cannot even include political actors in educational processes if the organization is supported from funds that are coming from different countries, like not Hungary, even the EU. So it's quite specific, but also in the past years, I felt that, and my colleagues felt that the narrative of voting is important and people should participate in elections just because of their voter rights is not enough. In the 90s, it might have been a good or a strong message as well that your voting rights count. In the past years, we were trying to focus on issues that are involving different target groups, and this 16 years of the governance of the Orban regime brought a lot of issues that felt painful for different electoral groups. And I think that there was a chance to mobilize these electoral groups at the last elections as well. And I think that there were a lot of mistakes done, but even the full invasion of Ukraine came in a point where the mobilization against the war was a stronger message than mobilizing for the issues that people feel that are important in Hungary. And I think that there is quite a similarity with the last elections, that in the last elections campaign started well before the elections, a year earlier because of the primary elections, where civil society organizations took a very important part in organizing. the primary elections. This time, because of the rise of a new political agent or party, there is a constant campaign again for 2 years, and it's hard to be loud enough for a civil society organization. So we are acting like Civil College Foundation is working in partnership with other organizations, strongly with the Hungarian Liberties Union and AHANG, which is not only an online petition platform, but also a now activist network, where we have been building this activist network since the last elections, since 2022, building on the activists who participated in the primary elections. And there are a few topics that we are highlighting now in mobilizing. AHANG is highlighting corruption. They are naming people who got involved in the Fidesz regime in corruption on national level and also on local level. And we as a coalition, with also the help of political capital, are focusing on voter fraud, training activists, training community groups against voter fraud, and all these trainings are open so that we are able to reach activists who are also going to be on site on election day.
Thank you very much. Zsófi, would you like to add something?
Yeah, just a little bit about my organization. So On-Hack Democracy is a non-partisan, non-governmental organization, and we started in 2018 after the Hungarian parliamentary elections, when 100,000 people marched on the streets to demand a recount. We started an investigation with my friends, and we put the supermajority into question. So we have more experience in mobilizing people to defend electoral integrity at the ballot box. However, I have to say that to mobilize people, what Magnus was saying as well, you have to plant the seeds well in advance and continuously engage them, because I don't really believe in this spectacle of mobilizing people last minute, and that's not democracy. Democracy is when you continuously listen and engage people in the decision making who are closest to the pain, and they have the firepower when the time comes, and they will mobilize other people as well. So I wholeheartedly believe in turning pain into hope and hope into action, and that has to happen continuously.
How do you sustain this level of preparedness of your audience?
So obviously, I mean, we are NGO, so it's in our DNA to do that. If we had more money, we could do so much more. I believe that the current funding model in the European Union is completely wrong. It's inadequate to support startup initiatives and scale up new initiatives. We need more flexible funding. And I think we need to be bold. So we need like a VC approach to civil society.
Okay, very interesting. I'm sure we will speak about the VC approach to fund civil society later on. But now I am turning to Susanna and Katarzyna, and I am asking about the best practices during the previous elections. How could you mobilize citizens? As we know from the results, both elections were very, very, very decisive and resulted in, let's say, structural changes both in Slovakia and in Poland, but in totally opposite direction. In Poland, into, let's say, good direction, into the direction of re-establishment of the rule of law. In Slovakia, into the democratic backsliding. So could you please describe your organization's role in the election campaign, and how could you mobilize citizens, and what the lessons learned from your perspective? I don't know who would like to start.
So maybe I can.
Okay, thank you, Susanna.
My organization is focusing on the specific topic, which is fight against corruption. But corruption is, the topic of the discussion in Slovakia, because a lot of representatives and politicians from current government were under investigation, and they are suspicious from corruption. That's why we were one of the initiators of the mobilization campaign before the election 2023. And it was the campaign which was targeted a young population. The name of campaign was Chcem tu zostať. I want to stay here, because it's a huge problem in Slovakia that the young people are leaving country, they study abroad, but then they stay there and live there. So the campaign had two aims: to support voting of this population, and also a side effect was to say them, come back, please come back to our country, needs you, because the society needs you. And I think that it was the hugest campaign during the last 10 or 20 years, because 137 NGOs organization was involved in this campaign, and yes, the main focus was on the young people. And when, as we can see, that survives, I can maybe help with my numbers, with the papers. 4 or 5 months before the elections, the surveys showed that only 52% of young people declared an intention to vote, and exit polls on election day recorded 69. So I think that the increase was amazing, and the campaign, and when we spoke about the useful techniques, we used mostly social networks, TikTok, Instagram, and so on. We engage 60 or 80 famous influencers, and Instagram reach of the campaign profile was 1 million accounts. It's not like, it's amazing number when we speak about the Slovak conditions, because we are a small country. And as you mentioned that our aim was to support maybe democratic political parties, because young people in Slovakia tend to vote democratic political parties. And you mentioned that the results of Slovak election wasn't successful, I mean, in this way. But I think that without this campaign, it could be worse. We can hear from the political experts that without this campaign, the votes of Slovaks and the votes from Slovaks abroad, they would likely, I mean, the current government would likely have obtained a constitutional majority. And when Zsofia mentioned that we should take care about citizens and their mobilization constantly, this campaign turned to movement. The Chcem tu zostať still exists. They turned to movement. And I think that the current government is afraid of that such a huge campaign will be also before the next election. That's why Prime Minister Robert Fico tried to criminalize this campaign. And police investigate funds and donates and so on. And also they try to restrict voting rights from abroad. Currently, there is a proposal in the Slovak parliament to prevent Slovaks abroad from voting by email, And that could be problem, I mean, in such a huge country as Canada, that Slovaks there should go to our embassy and vote there. So this is also, I think, that this also proves that this campaign was successful, and politicians like Robert Fico now is fighting against this movement because he's afraid that it will repeat before the next election.
Thank you very much, Susanna. Very impressive result despite the not so well election outcome. But as you said, it could have been much worse if you didn't do this very nice job. So, Katarzyna, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you for the invitation, and it's really a pleasure for me to again talk about Hungary, because for me the beginning of my engagement in political, in mobilizing citizens to vote was actually the elections in Hungary, the observation in 2022, and then different debriefing conferences, experience of Hungarian organizations, then Slovenian, because of course we also needed some positive example to see how we in Poland can prepare for increasing interest of citizens in elections. And listening to all the speeches before, I feel that it's important to underline this topic was the topic of electoral mobilization in 2023 was pretty well researched, and Batory Foundation made a research of reasons why people went for elections. And of course, civil society's engagement and mobilization campaign played an important role, but were not the only reason why people wanted to vote. The other one were high political emotions, and it was not caused by civil society. Mostly it was caused by the ruling party at that time, that was exactly making people outraged, disappointed, because they also promised different way of governing. So people saw cronyism, corruption, propaganda. Also people were pretty tired with propaganda that was too straightforward, I would say. And also, so everything like abortion law, COVID, inflation after the full-scale invasion. So everything together made people angry. But it was not enough, because before holidays, our elections were on 15th of October. So after huge mobilization during the period between elections, and the abortion law was like the first, when we had this huge marches at the end of 2021 and beginning of 2022 in winter time, and people on the street, a lot of fun, a lot of artists involved, I was sure, no, that's the end. But the comments of political specialists were, we will see what is the result on elections. And in June 2023, young women to whom the law applied somehow, who were involved, concerned, like 50% of them were going to go for elections, something like around 50, maybe below, maybe a bit above. Finally, it was over 70. So this mobilization, trying to refresh memory, trying to show you can make a change, they must have had some impact. And according to the research, the different mobilization campaigns were seen at least at 60% of voters, and the correlation between those between seeing the campaign online, these were mostly online campaigns, and going to elections was pretty high. So it had an impact. So civil society involvement was important, but was not the only one. It was also disappointment of the ruling party and expectation of change, because of course the candidates from the opposition side promised something. And there was also comment at the end of this research that was done in 2023 in November, or maybe a bit later, that the next mobilization will depend on keeping the feeling of empowerment in voters, which was not kept. Actually, we are now in the moment of being disappointed, and we saw it in elections in 2020 when 2025 presidential elections, when important group of voters have now voted, the one probably that was mobilized, especially young people. I also want to add that when we talk about mobilization of voters, it's not only the campaign, you should vote, you need to make change, and so on, but also different other types of information that were provided to voters. For example, for young people, something that we usually don't see is that they have no idea how to start, and they are a bit ashamed what they should do, to ask what they should do. So campaigns informing them in an attractive way what you should do, what is the order of steps, where you should go, when, and so on. Something that for me would be pretty obvious. It never comes to my mind that someone may not know and may be afraid to ask. So the channels addressed to young people in their language, channels that were credible were important. Like we had one video, like one online, most of the campaigns were online, of course, but one online channel that is in translation something like Stay Informed, which is run by young people who have these talks between themselves, these natural talks when someone is curious, asks questions, then gets answer. It is done in this colloquial language. And this is something that was really high outreach, I'm sorry. And there was also a campaign that was playing with words saying, it's my first time. So there were different ways to approach also young people, and also everything that was connected with election observations was mobilizing citizens to be interested in elections, although it addressed better elderly generations. So I even remember having a talk with someone who I wanted to encourage, and the girl, it was not a girl, this was a mother of a small child, so might have been 30 plus, and she said, no, I'm not going, my mother goes. And this was also pretty divided between ages, of course, not as a rule, but statistically, I would say. But 20,000 plus people went to observe elections on the election day. The question of election frauds that was mentioned by Zsófi is something that in our case is part of civil society organizations is afraid to use this language, because we see that the distrust to public sphere is pretty high. So we are afraid of the effect that we are going to have on the public sphere. So, but it's not very much mobilizing if you say it's worth observing elections. If you say we should go to have an eye on that and keep the honest elections, it will work much better. So we have an organization that is more on Zsófi's side, the Political Accountability Foundation, that is keeping very much international standards and saying in a language that is not biased. And we have Committee for Defense of Democracy, who is mobilizing in a bit different way. Of course, they also don't exaggerate. We have these discussions. What is probably our biggest achievement is that we cooperate, and it was also a lesson learned from Hungary, so that we cooperate and we kind of live with the fact that others are different and they use different language, and sometimes it's irritating, but we have the common goal, and we were able to keep it till today, even though there were some difficult situations. And this several campaigns in 2023, to be frank, everybody was surprised that there were so many campaigns, because they were addressing different groups, and media were not even able to show the campaign, the traditional media, I mean, which still exist in Poland. They were not able to cover the diversity, so somehow it was covered till the results of this all activities ended. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Katarzyna. Your contribution leads us to the next question, but obviously I would like to encourage all the participants, both on-site and remote participants, to reflect to each other's contributions. If you want, just please sign on me that. Yes, so the next topic I would like to discuss, which was mentioned by Zsófi and as well as by Katarzyna, that when we speak of mobilizing the citizens, we speak also mobilizing citizens not only for participation, but also for the election oversight. So as far as I understood, Zsófi, your organization is more keen on that, or this is the main focus of your organization. So could you share some practices, some activities that you did in previous elections?
Absolutely. So, I mean, we roll with the times, so we evolve, and I'm very proud of that. So this year is a little bit different than the elections in 2022. I can tell you about our 2022 experience. So we chose art to mobilize the electorate to defend the ballot at the ballot box at the polling station. And so we commissioned one of the most well-known directors in Hungary to write and direct video pieces based on our research. Because between 2018 and 2022, we gathered over 1,000 poll workers' testimonies. So we knew exactly how this very codependent system works in Hungary, and how poll workers are threatened. So this director did an amazing job, and the videos, 26 of the best actors in the country took part in the campaign, and I can tell you it was a hit, especially with the propaganda, which gave us even more visibility, which I'm very proud of. But essentially, these videos were about not only to mobilize or recruit poll workers, but also to educate people. And we explained what electoral abuses are and how, for example, the elderly are being abused at elderly care homes and are threatened that they would lose their bed, for example, if they didn't vote for a certain party. And how especially the Roma community is captured in this very rigid system that abuses the most vulnerable.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, we are mobilizing around a similar issue, but it's not monitoring in the polling stations, but outside. And this is what we've been doing in 2022 as well. In Hungary, there is no official format of being an independent observer. So like in Romania or now in Poland, there is a possibility for civil society organizations to mobilize observers. In Hungary, you can only be a delegate in a polling station, either from the local government or from political parties. So this makes it a little bit hard to involve civil society organizations directly. In 2022, there was an organization who still exists and do trainings, but they don't have the political background at the moment. 20K who have mobilized more than 20,000 people for local to be at the polling station. What we are doing is to show other ways of how citizens can be engaged on election day. So as I mentioned, we are doing community organizing constantly. As you also mentioned, this is not a work that you do a few months or start a few months before the elections. We are doing constantly community organizing, actively on site with people and meeting people in person. The AHANG has now activist groups in 30 counties, and we are providing trainings for them and also training for people in their surroundings. What is a strange situation now is that there is a gray zone of activists who are both active in civil society organization and are active in the movement of the new party. They are not party members, but they are activists in the so-called Tisza Islands, and we see them being interested and getting involved in other activities as well. So what we are training is how you can, as a person, document electoral fraud, which is not happening in the polling station. Often it's happening before the elections or on election day outside the polling stations, either with transporting or being influenced by your voice. In the afternoon, we will hear more from László Robert about this ways of influencing elections, but with the help of TAS, we give legal support for local activist groups and active citizens to report as many fraud as they can see.
Thank you very much. Katarzyna, if I understood you correctly, your organization is not very much focusing on that, so I think we can skip in this round.
But the groups in Poland, I mean, I think about ourselves as more about the coalition than
yes. And others do such kind of jobs. And
I also observe myself, so I can answer, but I think I have nothing to add now. So we can save time on that.
Yeah, and what about Zuzana? Is your organization is active on detecting election fraud or raising awareness about possible election fraud on the election day itself or before the elections?
We are doing almost the same thing which was already mentioned. For example, we are gradually building a network of young volunteers who are active mostly during the election. For example, during the regional election, they were directly present in the polling station and monitor the course of election. And we also have a form on our website, and people, citizens, can announce the fraud or corruption during the election. And thanks to the Ficos government, because the Ficos government attacked special police force. The name of police force was National Criminal Agency, which used to investigate corruption. It doesn't exist now, but the director of this special police body is now my dear colleague in the Stop Corruption Foundation. We employed the former director of this special body, and he is able to investigate such fraud and prepare a very professional complaints to police or to controlling bodies. So it's just what I want to add.
Well,
Okay.
when Zuzanna started to talk, I realized that of course we also are very much engaged in something that happens between the election days and abuse of state resources. This is something that is absolutely a hit for citizens' mobilization. I think that in 2020, when we saw the propaganda in public television and we could do nothing with that, because you cannot complain that, this was a moment when many people decided that elections have to be watched all the time. So it is, of course, it is a topic and it's very engaging.
Okay, thank you very much. There is already a question in the chat window to Katarzyna, but I think perhaps we can continue the discussion and have the questions afterward. So I would like to address the turnout issue. So, as it was mentioned by Magnus in the keynote speech, the turnout, the good news is, I think it's for all of us, the good news is that the turnout is not falling across these countries, apart probably of the European Parliament election. So why do you think it is so, and what can be the impact or the factor of NGOs in this phenomenon, and how do you see this in more long-term perspective, the turnout, which is obviously, as it was mentioned in Magnus' speech as well, obviously is linked somehow with the trust in the elections. So I would like to hear some reflections on it from you. I don't know who would like to start. It's up to you. Yeah, Moni.
I think that what is important now in community organizing, we have this saying that what we're building is we're building a bigger we, that the people have a feeling that they are not alone, that they are supported, that they have like-minded people around them, they have connections, and they are open to address the issues that are important for them. And I think that in the past years, a lot of social groups felt oppressed or neglected in Hungary, and it all adds up. So on the in our organizations, we are trying to build participation in public issues on daily basis, and provide tools for participation not only on election day. So election day is just one of the days when you can be part of democracy, but there are other events or ways as well. But what is different now, on one hand, is that a lot of social groups can feel the support of the others, and what is also for me is visible, that there is a change in how young people are getting involved in politics. So in 2000, I was working in elections since 2010, and in most of the elections I felt that it's very hard to in person ask questions from young people, and they are not going to political events, and they are not very engaged in politics. And I feel that there is a change even in people who are producing content online on political issues. There is a very even teenagers are more active in political issues. So yeah, I think these two things, that there is a connection in between social groups who were neglected, and also increasement of young people.
I mean, we live in an economic and political paradigm shift globally, and there is a huge generational shift as well now, culturally as well. And in terms of Hungary, I think a lot of people feel dehumanized, and a lot of people feel sidelined and hurt and in pain. And we are very polarized, and that's good for turnout to begin with.
What do you mean by paradigm shift? Could you elaborate on that?
Well, the entire global system is changing. Institutions, as we know them, don't serve our needs anymore. They need to open up. And we see what's happening in the United States, and the whole global order is turning upside down. Small countries, medium-sized countries want to matter. We don't want to be at the mercy of big powers, and unfortunately, the big powers are stretching their muscles also in our neighborhood. But again, going back to Hungary a little bit, the turnout here, we expect it to be record high. Many people expect it to be record high, but I'm not worried about the turnout. I'm more worried about this fragmented approach that we are seeing, that if the results are close and civil society, non-governmental organizations, non-partisan organizations' experience is not capitalized on, then I think we are going to see a problem here with the results that could, if the results are close, because public trust could be weakened, and the narrative on governability will be very important, because it will be another round of battle after the elections.
Well, yeah, that's definitely a very big threat. Does your organization do something concrete in the run-up of the upcoming elections and in the election day? So what is your concrete work for the international audience? Just to remind that Hungary will in Hungary a very high-stake election will be held in 12th of April, so in less than 4 weeks, and this is the first time after after 16 years, then the opposition can have chance to win the election. Yeah.
It's widely expected to be a historic election. I mean, we had a turning point in 1956, in 1990, and we have 2026, and we just don't know what will happen. And my organization, I'm very proud that we roll with the changes and we adapt to what is needed. And that's why it's important to have flexible funding and support organizations that can do a little bit, that can do things a little bit differently. And we are trying to look at what could happen on election day and 30 days after the elections, which will be crucial in terms of electoral integrity and democratic stability in a captured state where there's been a regime for 16 years.
Okay, so you don't want to give us more concrete insights what you are exactly doing on that, or to counter that?
We are looking at the most critical, most risky scenarios in terms of a close election. And we want to look at how we can protect democratic values and electoral integrity with different groups.
Okay, thank you very much. Any contribution from Katarzyna or Susanna on the turnover question?
Maybe just one thought, what I'm thinking now during the Zsófia speech, that yes, it's the same in Slovakia, that the polarization is very strong. I mean, the polarization of society, and the society is divided into mostly two groups, let's say pro-democratic and pro-autocratic regime. And there is some small group between those two, which is very thin, and it's very important which part can influence this thin part of society before the election. And I think that it's the same in Hungary, but this part of public was influenced by disinformation during the last elections. And this was also, I think, a mistake which was done by NGO sector in Slovakia, that the NGO sector devote very little energy to communication. And after the election, we decided to change it, in our foundation, because we believe that the main battle for democratic values in Slovakia is unfortunately taking place on social media today. So we threaten our communications team and develop a strategy based on statistics and very detailed research and based on data. And I think that it's a very successful story for us, because on some social media platforms we have now very successful, and we can compete to the hugest political party Smer. For example, we have the same strong communication on Instagram and on Facebook as Smer. And I think that it's important, because it's something what I think that, for example, Fico was able to won the election because he was active on social media, because after the murder of Jan Kuciak, everybody said that the political party Smer is very dead, but he was able to build a new governmental party through these new tools, through these platforms. So, and it is something what I think still some NGOs in Slovak Republic they don't understand, and it should.
Thank you.
Okay, so if I can add something on the topic of polarization, I'm afraid that it's going to be, because you're right, Zsófi, that this is good for turnout, but not enough, because there is always this group, like it can be high, but it also, like there is always this group that really, and this is the group of young people that don't like to be kind of a prisoner of this two camps that are always fighting. And this was exactly a case in 2025 in presidential elections, when we had like 100,000 difference between two candidates. This is for Poland nothing. Like both candidates had over 10 million votes. And then suddenly you have this difference of 300,000. And this made people, the people don't trust the result. So this is something that is also destroying democracy in general. Like we don't have any standards that we believe, because we have like parallel words as regards rule of law and elections and everything that happens. So of course there is this questions that what we can expect next, because electoral change does not mean the change of the political. It may only change the air that you breathe, but still it is not resolving all the problems that are prepared by the government that is in power.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think it's also a very important aspect that one camp might not accept the result, and that would create an enormous, not only mess, but distrust and even more dangerous things as called civil war or something like that. So there are two questions in the chat which are quite concrete, one to Katarzyna and one to Susanna. I think we can proceed this way, that I will ask these questions because the first one is in Hungarian, so in the meantime I translate it, and then you will address it, and then I would like to ask my colleagues to prepare the Mentimeter, because then we shall have the short voting game with the audience, and I would like to ask the participants of this panel to reflect it. So the question to Katarzyna is that whether the MFA, so the Media Freedom Act, how could it mitigate or counter the disinformation in Poland? So that's in a nutshell the question.
I don't think it's going. First of all, I don't think we are going to have an implementation law in this term, just because of the cohabitation that is very difficult. So probably the president will veto the law that is now proceeded. And also it does not include, because it's mostly about propaganda, less the disinformation, but more like the role of the public media that were an important player, but the provisions that are included in this law are not giving independence to public media. So it still allows to overtake them. So I'm afraid that it's not going to have huge influence. On the local level, however, there was very promising promise, let's say, that they are going to include provisions that are not allowing for local propaganda, for city halls to have their own newspapers. And it was like, for a year it was discussed, huge success. And then when the law was prepared, there is no such provisions. Of course, now they promise it will come back and so on, but generally there is huge disinformation what really these newspapers are. Like they are presented by local mayors as a crucial place where credible information is provided. There is mostly propaganda there. I know in Hungary you have a much different situation, but for Poland, for local democracy, it is an important problem. And we also should think about local democracy, not only about the national one. So I'm afraid it's not going to work as regards political advertising or any advertising, public advertising. Well, there are provisions implementing the MFA, Media Freedom Act, anyway, I will not use the abbreviation. And they look okay, but, you know, everything depends on implementation. But first of all, there will be no implementation because I don't suppose there is going to be any law anyway.
Thank you very much. And the next question goes to Susanna. So the question is, how could we, citizens of Slovakia at this time living abroad, could be involved in monitoring the conduct of elections next year at embassies and consulates if the government abolishes the option of voting by post? Do you have any experience with this practice? So this is a very recent phenomenon as far as I know, or a very recent provision that the government is trying to abolish this right, if I know it correctly, but you will elaborate and precise that.
Yes, first of all, I believe that this proposal won't pass through Slovak parliament, and if the constitutional court will say that it's against, it's abolishing Slovak constitution because it's abolishing the vote of right. But if it passed and it will be the reality that Slovaks won't be able to vote through the mail, and they should go to the embassy. I don't know because there is no details of this proposal, but I think that it will be a possibility to go to the embassy and to watch the whole process of voting. Also, that it will be possible for the Slovak citizens living abroad. But it is very good input from this discussion, which I bring to my office, and maybe we will prepare some detailed information about it for our citizens living in Czech Republic, in Canada, Austria, and so on. So good idea, and thank you for this.
Thank you very much, Susanna. As there is no more questions so far, but I still encourage you to ask questions in the chat window. We will proceed now to the Mentimeter, which will be a game. So I invite the online audience to take part in this very simple game, which will be to answer a question which will appear soon. Yeah, so how would you describe the level of trust citizens in your country have in fairness of elections? So there are 4 options: very high, moderate, low, or very low. So the question is about the trust in the fairness of elections in your country. So we will have 1 or 2 minutes until you think it over and you answer. Thanks very much for answering this question.
I think it depends on which camp you ask.
Yes. The answers are accumulating, which is very good. We have 22 so far. Responses. I think soon we can close the votes. And so it's equal between the moderate and the low. So, and there is a winner, the moderate, the moderate option. So some doubts exist, but institutions are broadly trusted. So these options got the most votes, and the second was the share of those who said that the trust level is low, then the very low, and at the end of the scale is the very high. Okay, so any reflections, if any, from the audience? Yes, Moni.
Yeah. 4 years ago, we had the chance to have a focus group research with people in different cities in Hungary, and both sides, both the supporters of the current government and the opposition, were fearing that there will be some kind of interference and there will be some kind of election fraud. So it's, yeah, I think that it's not that much decisive of the side. The difference is how what are the types of influence they have a fear of, and I think that a lot of people are underestimating the influence of buying votes among people living in poverty, because they think that it's just a minority in the society that is influenced. On the other hand, and now especially when the outcomes might be very, very close, a few hundred or even 10, 20 votes will be decisive.
If you want.
Yeah, sure. Just echoing on Moniz, when we surveyed poll workers, the very people who are at the heart of the polling station who are actually doing the work, and when we asked the question, do you trust in the fairness of the election process, an overwhelming majority said no. But that says something.
Okay, thank you. I don't see now Katarzyna and Susanna, if you have something to add. If not, then let's move to the second question. The second question of the Mentimeter is: how well equipped do you feel citizens in your country are to recognize election manipulation? So it's about the preparedness of the citizens to recognize or detect election manipulation.
Basically a score on our work.
So 1 means that they are not equipped at all, and 5 means that they are very well equipped. They know everything about how to detect the election manipulation. Okay, so I think, well, it's 2.5, so it's exactly in the middle. So they are prepared or not, the citizens. So they are half prepared, let's put it this way. By now it's 2.4. Okay, so any reflections on that from the panelists?
Yeah, I think that among people we are meeting, there is quite a lot of information accessible, but I think they are more prepared to spot it offline than online.
Okay. Thank you.
I would say that it becomes harder to recognize. Some. For example, hoax or such things because of AI. We were witness of the disinformation campaign against opposition political leader, Mr. Šimečka, because somebody produced AI fake video against him. And it was like, I cannot recognize that it's a fake. So for common population, it must be very, very hard. So I think that it will be a very hard job before election to spread awareness about these techniques.
Okay, thank you very much. And now we proceed to the third question. What is one concrete initiative or practice from your context that has successfully mobilized voters? And here we expect you to write some words or just a short sentence. And afterwards, you can vote among these options as well. So it's a two-step exercise. So we give a little bit more time for that. So the one concrete initiative, or what you think the most important initiative or practice from your context that has successfully mobilized voters. So what is the most important factor, or what could be the most important factor for mobilization? Tisa Islands. Visiting the voters in countryside, very good. Showing them examples of abusing state resources. Budapest municipality's campaign for citizens to act as election observers. Somebody suggests to see a film, Nobody Against Putin, Mr. Nobody Against Putin. I am sure many of you have seen the film, excellent film. Non-partisan Get Out the Vote campaign. According to polls for the next election, students' movement, especially their marches through Serbia towns, villages. Emotions. New initiative. Okay, thank you very much. There is some more. Having candidates that are engaged on social media platforms where young voters spend their time. Communication, explanation, education, media campaign for Slovak diaspora. This is the issue which was already addressed. Okay. And now you can vote among these factors. I think you can have one vote. Yes? Yeah. So you can choose among these factors. Those who haven't written anything, they can vote as well. It's very democratic.
Increasing participation, great.
Exactly. This is also a method. Okay, in the meantime, I would like to ask the panelists to prepare some final thoughts, very, very briefly, if there is any. If no, then that's not a problem either, because then we have to wrap up. Okay, so we can have a very short round and to kind of to give a last contribution. What, for example, on what was for you the most important takeaway of this session. That could be a short question as the last agenda point. Okay, so in the meantime we have the vote and the voting, and so visiting the voters in countryside, so that was the most popular. So one concrete initiative that can successfully mobilize a voter, according to yourselves, it is visiting people in the countryside. I think it's really very important and timely in Hungary as well as probably in the other countries as well. Thank you very much. And just a last round. Everybody has, let's say, 1 minute to reflect to the panel. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I like the outcome in a way because, as we mentioned, many of us, although it's really tiring to have a campaign for 1 or 2 years, at the same time, it is very crucial that it's an ongoing, reaching out is an ongoing thing, and that people are involved in political debates on locally or nationally quite regularly. What is a question for me for a long time as a voter is that although I know who I'm going to vote for at these elections, I don't have a party who really represents my political views at the moment. And it has happened in Europe and all around the world that people who define themselves as left-wing or liberal voters don't have to think about how to rebuild a political power which is really relates to them.
Okay, thank you. Just very briefly, one minute. Zsófi?
Just echoing on Moni's words, I think we're all part of the problem, but we're all part of the solution as well. It's a massive shift that we are living in right now. And I think we need to tap into the collective intelligence of people. And this is what institutions need to do. And we need to be bolder in pushing this approach because the current status quo is obviously unworkable. And I also want to be represented. I also want my voice to be heard. And that's what we need to push from outside of institutions.
Okay, thank you very much. And Katarzyna and Susanna, the last words.
Looking forward to your elections.
Yes, we are looking forward very much to it as well. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yes, Susanna?
We cannot hear you.
You are muted,
you have to
sorry.
switch on your microphone.
Yeah, you are muted.
I'm just thinking that we can do a lot to ensure that election results do not undermine democratic foundations. I mean, in democratic principles. I mean, as a civic society, but it ultimately also depends on what political parties offer. So this is, I think, the most important things.
Thank you very much. Let it be the last words of this panel. I would like to thank you very much for your participation and that you shared your opinion and insights. So Katarzyna, Susanna, Monika and Zsófia, thanks again for being with us. And we shall have now a 5 minutes technical break and we shall start the next panel at 12:35. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much.
Bye.